today I wanted to do a bit of a different style talking video and maybe even start a series based on some of the questions people frequently ask me. So for this video, I wanted to talk a bit about why you should do studies in observational drawing to improve your art. I've mentioned in the past how I do studies whenever I have art block or I just feel like it's difficult to draw things, and I was dealing with a bit of that last week. So I did this little portrait study of Maisie Williams, and you'll see me working on this in the background, and it definitely helped me to get out of my funk a bit. So first of all, there's always a lot of hype in the art community about art style. Everyone wants to have an iconic art style and have something they can call their own, which is great. But a lot of professionals who have an iconic art style are actually pretty versatile, and they can draw in multiple styles depending on what project they're working on. So I just want to sort of get into that and break down the mindset of art styles so that we can focus on fundamentals. So art style in general is just problem solving. It's simplifying a thing that already exists into an appealing visual language. So how can you simplify something if you don't know what it looks like in the first place and you can't draw it? I feel like art style in some ways can hold back a lot of beginners because beginners don't really want to do studies because they're not as fun, and when you're doing a study, you're not necessarily drawing in an art style that will help you to build a platform and an audience. I see a lot of people, especially beginners, neglect the more fundamental sides of drawing. I did this for years, and I feel like it's really held me back. Observational drawing and using references when you draw from your imagination can help you to learn the difficult stuff like anatomy and proportions, light, background, faces, all that good stuff. Observational drawing is hard for sure, but learning to be a more versatile artist will work in your favor. No one can really draw from their imagination alone. People have to practice and build up a visual library. However, even professionals do studies and use references all the time. No matter how experienced you are or how big your visual library is, you'll always need to use references and do studies in order to improve your work. And I'm going to get to this probably in a different video because it's a big topic, but studies aren't just limited to life drawing or photos. Studies of experienced artists' work are also very valid and super important to developing an appealing visual language for your own art style. Again, that's a different video though. Okay, so I'm no professional, but I used to pretty much never use references whenever I was drawing, and it made me resort to tricks and loopholes to hide art mistakes I was simply making because I didn't know how to fix them and I didn't know how to draw the thing. It held me back a lot because I sucked at observational drawing. I didn't know how to break down a photo or an object I was looking at, even though I'd been drawing for years. And as an experienced artist who normally drew pretty decent stuff, it sucked to draw something that sucked. So yeah, a lot of the stuff I drew whenever I first started doing the studies was just bad. It didn't look anything like my reference, and yours may not either. You might not totally like what you draw, but don't get discouraged, because at least this means that you can take a step back and see the areas you need to improve in. You see, it's hard to be objective about your work when you're drawing in a specific art style. A lot of things can be left up to stylistic choices, and it might be difficult to know if you need to work on your human anatomy and structure or your lighting or your backgrounds. When you're drawing from a photo or from life with a specific goal to try to capture what's in front of you, you can be a little bit more objective about the areas you need to focus on and improve in. Let me give you an example. The study I was working on in this video really challenged me. Maisie Williams has a really interesting face, she's super pretty. It really took me out of my face comfort zone and prevented me from resorting to my default face structure. Because I'm not great at likeness or facial observation yet, you can clearly see that some art style was spilling into this piece to cover up some of the rough edges. The eyes are a bit too big and cartoony. I added a few too many highlights to spruce up the piece. There's some crutches, but that's okay, because I learned a lot from this study, and next time I work on a portrait study, I can work on drawing eyes and skin and noses, knowing they're my weak points. When you're doing studies, you have to be objective about your work what you really need to improve on. So I've talked a lot about why you should do observational drawing, but not as much how you should do observational drawing. My method is usually to choose a photo I want to draw and figure out what my goal for the study is. It helps to have a goal in mind for each study. Say you want to practice eyes, noses, faces, lighting, whatever. It keeps you from obsessing about every single little detail at once, and it helps you to focus on that one thing you're trying to improve on that particular piece. So whenever I'm choosing the reference I use for that piece, I keep that in mind, and I try to use a reference that will challenge me in that particular area. And I do normally draw from photos because I don't normally have a model handy, although life drawing is typically better for learning. So depending on what my goal is for a study, I'll execute it in a number of different ways with a number of different mediums. Maybe my goal is to improve on my painting, like with this piece. If my goal is to improve my drawing, I'll probably focus more on how to show the subject through lines and break down the proportions and show the contours of the figure with hatching. Sometimes my goal is to draw better poses, so I'll do quick sketches of poses I like to capture the motion. This is called gesture drawing. And sometimes I want to focus on colors, so I'll practice specifically getting the colors of my reference right without color picking. Like I said, the key is to choose a reference that's going to challenge you in whatever area you're trying to improve in, and oftentimes choosing a challenging medium can also be helpful, although don't drive yourself crazy. So in terms of the actual study process, it's called a study for a reason, right? The whole point is to study your reference, break it down, and then try to draw it for yourself. I usually find that the easiest way to break down a reference is by breaking down my subject into simpler shapes. If your subjects are normally people, like mine are, you can break them down into even simpler shapes by breaking down the body into shapes that represent the head, torso, limbs, and even joints. I find that most artists have a visual shorthand for the rough sketch or skeleton stage of drawing a person. Understanding these shapes and how the parts of the human body move and fit together can help you to draw people without direct reference in the future. But it all starts with doing studies so that you can understand how those shapes and anatomical features fit together. But breaking things down with shapes doesn't stop at the body. Faces are one of the most difficult parts of the human body to draw, but there are several methods of breaking down the anatomical features of the face to help you to get accurate proportions. My favorite method comes from a YouTube artist called Ergo Josh. It's called the mask method, and I've started using it pretty much every time I break down or draw a face. I actually used it in this video to draw Maisie Williams, and if you want to check out his video about it, I'll leave it in the pinned comment down below. But basically, everything you're trying to draw can be broken down into simpler shapes and then refined to add in that detail. People, backgrounds, animals, plants, you name it, and that's how I approach studies. I focus on that base structure, the shapes, and then I refine it and add in that detail. I find that a lot of people don't struggle as much when drawing an isolated, detailed feature, like an eye, a lip, just one lip, a plant, a hand. But when you try to put it all together, that's when it gets confusing. You don't know quite how it fits. When you do studies, focus on the structure of your subjects first and then the details that make it pretty. If you have the structure there, you know where all the details go. That's the easy part. And that kind of brings us full circle, right? When you're trying to improve your art, focus on the structure first. You need to know the fundamentals, the anatomy, the proportions, lighting, color, and composition before you add in the pretty details like an appealing art style. That doesn't mean you don't work on your art style at all. Preferably, you should develop both at the same time. But I guess my point with this video is, don't ignore the things like studies that could really help you to improve your art. When you see mistakes in your work, acknowledge them and work to improve them, because that's how you'll grow as an artist. So that's it for this video. I'm sorry if you're a little confused or if I didn't explain some of these topics nearly enough. It is a shorter video today, but if you guys are interested in seeing more stuff about observational drawing and the fundamentals from me, please leave a comment below and let me know. I'll definitely try to make some videos that expand on these topics in the future, especially ones with more visuals so that you guys actually know what I'm talking about. I've just been needing a break from the heavy editing lately. Before I go, I just want to quickly disclaim that, like, if you're new to art or if you're super experienced, like, don't force yourself to do studies. Like, I'm a big believer in you should draw what you want, and drawing should primarily make you happy, but This is mainly, you know, motivation for people who are like, man, I really want to improve and I can't figure out how. And I think that if you are very motivated to improve and work on some of the fundamental things, then studies are very good for that. But don't drive yourself crazy or put a lot of pressure on yourself to do all these studies if you like are struggling to find motivation to draw in the first place. Like, don't make your art miserable. Art is supposed to be fun and enjoyable. So I just wanted to add that in real quick. It's a little nugget of wisdom. Anyways, if you made it this far, tell me in the comments what your favorite thing to draw is when you're doing art studies. And thank you so much for watching and commenting and subscribing. I don't know what that voice is, and I'm very glad that I did it at the end of the video instead of the beginning. I hope my rambling was helpful, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace out. Goodbye.
It's Christmas, let's go home.